2 minutes. One minute. Ten seconds. You may begin.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the special work session of the Burnsville City Council meeting. It is 6:09. The clerk will note that all council members are present. Tonight's meeting is being conducted virtually, and all of the city council members and our staff are all joining us electronically. So members of the public may watch this meeting online at burnsville.gov/meetings or Comcast channel 16 or 859. If you would like to speak during the meeting, you may call 651-372-8299. You may also speak by joining us online at zoom.us/join. More information is available on our meeting webpage and in the council agenda packet. Please note that there is an audio delay if you are watching us on TV or online. So if you speak, please mute your video broadcast first. And so our council work sessions are very informal, and we go directly to our items. So the first item on the agenda this evening is the County Assessors Valuation Update. And joining us from the county is Scott Lyons, Dakota County Assessor. And Mr. Lyons, welcome.
Hello, Madam Mayor and council members. I'm Scott Lyons with Dakota County Assessing Services. Thank you for having me tonight to give you a bit of an update on our office and our structure and some of the rules and laws that we follow. I've been with the county assessor's office for 29 years actually, and I've been recently appointed the county assessor about 9 months ago. Next slide, please. So my agenda will be covering some of the overview of our assessing services department. We'll talk about our two main functions as assessors. I'll cover some Dakota County statistics and also Burnsville statistics, and they will be in red throughout the presentation. I'll talk a bit about how market value is determined. We'll cover the valuation notice and appeal process, and I'll give you some ideas on how to find property information online. Next slide, please. So assessing services is part of the Public Services and Revenue Division at Dakota County. We have a county-wide assessment system, meaning that there is no local or city assessors. We're completely county-wide, and we cover all 34 taxing districts. It's about 580 square miles county-wide. We currently have over 162,000 parcels, and our 2020 market value has now exceeded $56.5 billion. Next slide, please. This is a org chart of our office. We have 4 main appraisal and assessment sections. We currently have 40 full-time employees. My deputy is also our residential manager. His name is Joel Miller. He's been with us 27 years. Our commercial manager is Dustin Hendricks. He's been with us 25 years. And our administration manager is Dawn Klein. She has been with us 33 years. And our newest is our systems manager, Mike Niemeyer. He's been with us 7 years. So quite a bit of institutional knowledge, if you will, on our management team. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to touch base on a couple of links here that you can go to. The first 2 and the last one. The first 2 links are from the Department of Revenue. If you want to learn anything about what we do as assessors throughout Minnesota, that first link is www.revenue.state.mn.us/property tax administrators manual. You can download 602 pages. That'll tell you everything that we have to do. The next one is the Department of Revenue Sales Ratio Study. This is a key document that we also refer to. This year for the 2020 study, that covers 57 pages. You can also download that. That'll tell you everything about our main tool that we use to adjust our assessment. The very last link on the bottom is the Minnesota Tax Court link. You can go to the minnesota.gov/tax court and search any case that has occurred in Minnesota for a number of years going back in history to find how tax court has ruled for a taxpayer or for the county on different property tax appeals. Next slide, please. So our 2 main functions as assessors is to classify all property and to value all property. Our statutory assessment date is January 2nd of each year. State law requires us to appraise for 100% of market value. Now, market value is basically the price that would prevail under open competitive market conditions. Assessors also physically revalue 20% of the county each year, and we are to consider all factors that affect market value. So in a sense, we are seeking fee simple market value. Next page, please. I'll talk about the DOR ratio study a little bit. For the 2020 assessment, we are specifically required to look at sales that fall between October 1st of 18 through September 30th of 19 to establish our 2020 assessment. A sale one day on either side of that date range is not included in establishing our 2020 assessment. The Department of Revenue does require us and assessors throughout the state to carry our median sales ratios between 90 and 105% of market value. For 2020, our medians for all major property groups throughout the county do fall between 94.8 and 96.6%. Common misconception, it's kind of going away now, but assessors raise taxes. No, we don't. The assessor's market value and classification is used to spread the tax burden of local governments. Next slide, please. So these are our final sale counts and median ratios for the county and for Burnsville specifically. As you can see in the top, we analyzed 6,839 sales in the residential category for this assessment, and we've carried our median level of assessment at 95%. Some of the other main categories are apartments, commercial, and industrial, and you can see that those have less qualified sales throughout the county that are used to judge and guide our assessment, but we've statutorily find ourselves right in around the 95% again. Burnsville now, when we get down to just the city of Burnsville, we have 954 residential sales that were included in this sales ratio study. We carry the median came in at 94.9%. The other categories, again, gets a little more difficult with less market data. Apartments only had 3 sales, commercial 12 sales, and industrial 7 sales for the city. Next slide, please. Our other main function is classification. And this is something that we do determine annually, and it is based on the primary or actual use of the property. And it could be multiple classifications, such as a property that's split class, residential and commercial. Now, this classification is completely independent of zoning and comprehensive land use. Some examples, of course, are homesteaded residential, non-homesteaded residential, commercial, industrial, apartment, agricultural, and there are quite a few more actually. Next slide, please. Okay, this slide shows us some of the 2020 market value summary data. Our 2020 valuation notices were mailed March 9th. That's our 2020 market value, which is used for the basis of the 2021 taxes. And this was mailed along with the 2020 tax statements. So countywide, our total estimated market value has increased 5.6% to a little over $56.5 billion. Burnsville increased 4.8% to a little over $7.6 billion. And our taxable market value, that's gone up a little more. That is at 6.1% increase to $54.7 billion, in Burnsville increased 5.2% roughly to $7.39 billion. Now, taxable market value went up a little more than estimated market value due to the phase out of the homestead market value exclusion. As properties increase in value, they get less of that exclusion on the residential side. Next slide, please. Countywide, we added a little over $640 million in new construction. Burnsville had $51.4 million in new construction value added this year. The rates below here are our 2020 median value changes for the main categories. As an example, you can see residential countywide, our median change was 3.1% across the county. Burnsville specifically was 2.99%. Townhouses and condos were a stronger category within the residential market. As you can see, Burnsville went up 6.6% for townhouses and condos about 8.3%. Apartments, 7.5% to 8% countywide, including Burnsville. Commercial is about 4.5% increase also over last year, and industrial has been a very strong sector. We increased values on average 10%. Burnsville is 9.44%. Next slide, please. So how is market value determined? Well, assessors, appraisers for the county, view property, gather information, analyze sales, and then compute value. Next slide. And I mentioned that we are required to view property once every 5 years. We do inspect new construction annually. All the cities and townships submit all the building permit data that we review and inspect for addition to our assessment. For property revaluation, we divide the county into quintiles so we can inspect 1/5 each year. Residential is split by geographic area within a city. Commercial industrial is split by larger categories countywide. So we can do all hotels in 1 year, office another year, retail, and so on. That helps us with efficiencies and equalization amongst all the property. So we use different inspection methods for efficiency and accuracy. And with this COVID-19 pandemic, obviously we are not going out to properties. We are doing a lot more desktop review. In order to do that, we have some tools that have been invested in by the county over the last few years. One is called pictometry and another is called near map. These are available online. I'll show you later. But these are aerial and oblique imagery of homes that allow an assessor to virtually circle a home and zoom in to check on condition and quality. We also have a street level imagery that was driven by another company a couple of years ago that provides us high imagery, quality imagery of the Street. So we don't know when we're going to get back to doing physical inspections, but as we're currently doing reviews right now in our 2020 assessment, we've been pretty creative. Homeowners have actually engaged in FaceTime inspections with my staff, have sent in videos and pictures of their homes and interior finish to allow us to continue to do our statutory jobs. Next slide, please. So another part is gathering information. Appraisers gather information on all characteristics of the property that affect market value. We are required by law to carry a separate value for land and buildings. And if land is vacant and doesn't have any identifiable use, we must class it based on its highest and best use. Highest and best use has 4 tests which measure its physical possibility, legally permissible, financially feasible, and most productive use of the site. Next slide, please. So some of the characteristics that we collect on property, of course, is the size. We measure the exterior of all homes and businesses in the county. We categorize property by style. Is it a 2-story home? Is it a split entry? Things like that. We track the age when it was built, because we must account for depreciation and diminished or outdated utility. And we also estimate an effective age so that it takes into account any improvements or enhancements to a property. We look at the quality of construction, the quality of basement to finish, the amount of basement finish, of course, bedrooms and bathrooms, and other outbuildings or yard items such as decks, sport courts, sheds, pools, things like that. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the sales ratio study. This basically is our primary tool to guide and determine our market values for all properties in the county. Basically, we slice and dice all sales, and we look at them in all manners to isolate market changes and market value of components of the different property types. This allows us to determine and replicate basically the market trends. Now, we've consistently meet the statutory requirements of our level of assessment. In fact, we've met the State Board of Equalization's requirements for the last 26 years, and there's not too many jurisdictions in Minnesota that can claim that. So we have a very sound and statistically significant assessment. Next page, please. So as far as computing value, most of our properties are valued using a CAMA system. It's a computer-aided mass appraisal program. Our current vendor is Tyler Technologies. They are actually worldwide with their platform, and we went live and started our assessment with that platform starting with our 2012 assessment. And it's necessary to appraise 162,000 parcels annually. You just can't do something like that with a staff of 40 people without the efficiencies of a CAMA system. So we enter all the characteristics of these properties into the system. We analyze and enter all of the sales information that reflects the market trends. And we analyze down to individual features and neighborhoods to make our adjustments year to year. Next slide, please. So once we establish values, of course, we mail value notices, and they went out March 9th this year, and they're usually always in early March. And for this time, it starts our appeal process for taxes payable in 2021. Our review period will be ending in about 2 weeks when the Special Board of Appeal and Equalization meets. That'll be on June 1st. Next slide, please. So when taxpayers get their value notices, we refer and ask that they go and visit property information online. They go to www.dakotacounty.us/home and property. There they can find a lot of information about all of their neighbors and all of the property in the county. They can look at all of the aerial maps and see statistics countywide. They can find sales, compare their property to those sales to see if they have an issue with us. And, of course, sometimes they do. We ask them to contact us during this informal open book period, we call it. And during this open book period, we historically have had in-person scheduled meetings at 3 different service centers. Of course, this year we had to cancel those and asked all the taxpayers to call us and email us, which they have done. The next item there is a local board of appeal and equalization. Most of the jurisdictions in Dakota County have turned over those requirements to the Special County Board of an Appeal and Equalization. Burnsville did it, I think, more than 25 years ago. The only one we have left is Vermilion Township that retains those duties, and I'm hopeful I can convince them to turn their duties over to the county board by next year. At the County Board of Appeal and Equalization, that is really the last informal step for a taxpayer to appeal their value or classification. Historically, not many people have attended this. We really strive hard to resolve issues with the taxpayers before this meeting. We are constantly in contact and correcting physical data on their properties, explaining and educating taxpayers on our appraisal process and our requirements as assessors. But on occasion, you can't see eye to eye. So the county board sits as an impartial body. This board is appointed by the county commissioners. They're public appointees that have some expertise in real estate. We have real estate attorneys, we have bank appraisers, we have mortgage bankers, all kinds of people that have been appointed to this board over the years. This year, for June 1st, we have right now about 5 parties signed up for the board. We do not know if they will all go. Last year we had none. The year before we had 2. The last bullet, Minnesota Tax Court. To appeal your market value or classification that's just been published here, you have until April 30th of taxes payable in 2021 to formally appeal in the Minnesota Tax Court. That's usually an avenue that's reserved by, higher valued commercial and apartment owners. And last year we had 195 tax court cases countywide. This year, we do not know the final count yet, but we would expect it to be similar. Given the COVID pandemic, I can see this increasing as we go forward the next couple of years. Next slide, please. This is a little bit of a duplicate of data here, but some more ways to contact us. Again, the internet website, dakotacounty.us. There's a central phone number that people have been calling historically. Of course, they reach us at Assessing Services directly and through email. In person is closed. Obviously, we are all working remotely now, and we do not know that we will actually be brought back to the county through the remainder of the summer. So at some point in the future, we will open back up. Next slide, please. This is just a screen capture of where to go on our website, and you can see across the top tabs, all of our data is housed under the home and property. That is your spot to go to for all assessment related data and information on rules and procedures, and look at aerial and online maps. We are constantly reviewing and trying to enhance and provide more data for self-service through the website, which has been a very significant improvement for data delivery. Next page, please. Some of you have possibly gone to this website before. This gets significant use countywide. This is the Dakota County Interactive GIS Map. If you drill down to the Interactive GIS Map link, you can see on your left-hand side map layers. There's all kinds of layers that are available to click on and lay over the maps. I know there was some interest in the market value percent change, or commonly called a heat map. That is available on the website if you click on the parcel's estimated market value percent change button. Next slide, please. When you do zoom in on a parcel, you will see now for this year and last, we added property sketches and property tax statements. So you can click on any parcel in the county. You can see who owns it. You can see the tax statements. You can look at the parcel's sketch as made by the assessor. You can look at recent sales, all kinds of data. You can zoom in on your pictometry link and near map link on the top. You can circle around a property and look at all different angles of the property. It's a heavily used site that has relieved thousands and thousands of phone calls to our office from realtors and real estate appraisers asking to talk to assessors and trying to get data. So next slide, please. It's just an example of a sketch that is out there. This property is a 2-story with finished basement. Looks like they have some kind of a gazebo or something in their yard. The grid on the right will show you the gross area of the building and then also living area. And this has also been a significant improvement that's driven down calls to our office. Next slide, please. Tax estimates. This has been out on the web for many years. Our taxation department maintains and updates this, but historically we had received numerous calls from taxpayers ranging from what will my taxes change if I add a new deck to, how much is this new 100,000 square foot warehouse going to be taxed? So another tool for self-service. We don't tell them how to use it. We just point them there and say, put in your estimate of value, or look at some of your competitors' properties and put in their estimated value to give yourself an estimate of taxes. So another heavily used part of our website. And next slide, I guess. With that, is there any questions for me? If you happen to have any,
I think you're muted.
Yeah, I need to unmute and you need to, Vince.
Thank you, Mr. Lyons, for the presentation. I don't have a question so much as I have a statement. I use county websites pretty much daily in my career as an insurance agent, and Dakota County stands alone as probably the best as far as what you all provide and ease of use. And so I just wanted to say thank you for providing a really superior product. If you could call the folks at Hennepin County and tell them to do what you guys do, it would be appreciated. So
I could definitely talk to my peers and thank you for the feedback. And if you ever do see ways that we can improve it, please let me know.
absolutely. Thank you very much.
I'm going to go to Ms. Rhodey. Jenny, do you have anything to add? You're the contact person for this item.
I guess I don't have anything to add. I want to thank Scott for coming and presenting to us this evening, but I don't have anything additional on this item.
Yeah. I'm really glad that we've done this. We haven't done this in a long time. I don't know the last time Scott, the county assessor, has been in, but it was someone other than you.
Yeah, it was probably many years. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is really nice. So thank you, Melanie and Jenny and Greg, for bringing this item, because I will tell you that our residents would appreciate this. So Scott, your PowerPoint, will they be available for us?
Yes, I sent that to your staff, so it's available.
Okay, so that would be great. Perhaps it might. Melanie, I was just listening and wondering if that could be a resource on our website, so if people went and then we can direct them to the county if they're asking.
Yeah, we certainly can do that. Absolutely.
Yeah, because this was really good. It's good to always have refreshers on all of this. Is there anyone else? Any comments, any questions for Scott or Jenny? Well, thank you so much, Jenny and Scott. We really appreciate your coming in, Scott, and educating us.
Yep, you bet. Anytime.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is our city fee philosophy discussion and the review of the city's philosophy. There's no action required here. And Melanie, this is yours.
Yes, Madam Mayor and Council, this is a carryover from the all-day work session earlier this year. And why don't we go to the next slide, please? The council had asked for consideration of how we look at our city fees. So I thought it'd be helpful to walk through kind of the foundational documents that we have in place. City policy 1.250 is our financial plan. Within it, it talks about several objectives of our financial plan, stability, being based on sound principles, distributing the cost of services, so having a diverse revenue sources, preventing deterioration of our public facilities, protecting our credit rating, and it's used as a reference for city staff, but also for the city council as we make financial decisions. Next slide, please. So within here, I just wanted to break down how the general fund budget and our overall budget is diversified. You see we've got property taxes, charges for services, and all other sources. So within our general fund budget, charges for services make up about 21%. Next slide, please. And then within our overall budget, it's slightly larger at, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing that number in front of me, at 31%, excuse me. So you can see that we've got a diverse revenue stream when we think about how we allocate our revenue or how we collect revenue. Next slide, please. Within financial policy 1.250, there is information, and that this information has been contained in your background materials, but I just included the highlights here, the criteria that have been established for your fees and charges. So there's a market comparison. The vast majority of our fees fall under this criteria. The attempt is to set fees in the upper quartile of the market. We use our peer communities. I believe there's all 13 of those communities that we compare against, and so that's our market. There's a maximum set by external source. For some fees, the state or other entities may restrict what that charge can be established at. There's an entrepreneurial approach, meaning we're looking to be at the top of the market for those fees. Recovering the cost of service, simply that the program, those fees will be self-supporting for the cost it takes to provide that service. And finally, we have utility fees, and we say that we're going to complete a review of our rate study annually, which we do. And this year, we're actually doing a deeper dive into our utility rates to see how we can, if there's any adjustments we want to make for a sustainable utility fee structure. Next slide, please. So as the council visits through this and talks through this, we've outlined a couple of policy considerations to help guide the discussion. And so I'll ask if the council has the criteria, the current criteria, is that sufficient to capture your policy goals for service fees and charges? Is there any other criteria you may like to consider? Or is there any additional information that we can provide? So with that, happy to stand for any questions or let the council discuss.
Members of the council, any thoughts? I think when I look at all of this and when I look at the financial management plan that we have with regard to how we look at our fees and charges, and also I believe the discussion on the upper quartile was to not be competitive. If there is a service that can handle something that we're doing, then they'll bid lower than anything that we're doing. And so that's why those fees are that way. So I have Vince and then Dan Keeley.
Thank you. One thing I would like to maybe look at a little bit deeper is based off of our last conversation about fees, where we discussed a fee structure based on, I believe it was sales, overall sales, kind of more fit to the size of the business. I know we're going to look at implementing that during this COVID crisis, but I kind of like that idea as a rule moving forward, just as a very broad statement. I couldn't get into the weeds on it right now, but I like right sizing things to businesses rather than kind of running a hard rule like I think we've been doing, and I think the industry probably has been doing as a whole. But that would be my only comment
Yeah,
on fees.
and I think, from that last discussion we had with regard to bars and restaurant, Jenny offered that perspective. And I believe, Melanie, you can, and Greg can, but I understand that you all are looking at all of that and how that can be implemented. Right? Okay.
Yes, Madam Mayor, we certainly would be able to bring forward a revised calculation.
Okay.
If that's the thought.
Yeah. Dan Keeley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know that this dates back to an original inquiry about our fees, in particular liquor license fees, and possibly some others. And then it had to wait quite a while there was an issue that that was blocking our ability in our best interest to discuss it. We finally got to it at the all-day work session, and now we're following up. So in the policy considerations, it's asking, really, from what I get from this, is Melanie and staff are asking, is this policy still valid to all of us? Do you still want to follow this policy? Because over the last several years, we've deviated from it in some one-off scenarios. It's probably a good time to have this discussion of this is the philosophy that we want to apply to the various fees throughout the city. And generally speaking, I don't have a problem with it. I do like the market comparison, putting us in the upper quartile. That's been in place for a long time. But my biggest concern still revolves around our most expensive fee, and that's the liquor license. And so I think what I would rather see done with that is have it segmented away from the general fee policy and have it fall under its own individual liquor license fee policy. And the reason for that is you look at our list of fees, it runs the gamut from things that are $50 or smaller, few $100, all the way up to this liquor license that's $8,100. And I think it's kind of in a class by itself because of the cost. It's big. And I would like to have a discussion about controlling that number, if not reducing it a little, and get it out of this automatic increase year over year over year. Because what I've witnessed in the last 14 years is it's grown. We actually had a council discussion many years ago and reduced it to sort of maybe hit the reset button and get it back start. But now it's creeping back up again. And, I look at it 5-10 years from now, what's that going to be? It's $8,100 now. Is it going to be $12,000 for a bar or restaurant to be able to buy a liquor license in Burnsville? It just seems to be growing too fast by staying in this particular market comparison and or getting an increase each year. So my idea is carving out liquor into its own, because it is so unique, and letting the rest of our fee structure fall under this bigger blanket or bigger umbrella policy. So that's what I would like to put forward.
So if it's, let's see, Councilmember Dan Gustafson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, Dan, that's a discussion we had a while back about, is it fair that like a JR's pays the same fee a larger bar would pay? Of according to their volume of business and even the size of their footprint. And I think that's something we can take a look at. I also agree with you that the overall policy in the upper percentile, I think, has served us well. And as we can see, it's a pretty large part of our revenue. And, you know, cutting the revenue to the city right now could be a dangerous thing for us because we don't know what else is coming yet. And so I'd be a little adverse to that. But I'm totally open to having some tiered things. And I think we have some surrounding cities around us that actually do some tiered on the liquors as well. And you know, our last 2 weeks seem to be all about the liquor and restaurants, but that is actually an industry that really has been nailed here that employs a lot of people in this town.
Very much so. I
And
mean,
Melanie, as staff is doing, you know, the analysis with the sales and everything, can you bring back some consideration on what you all might think that fee? Because I know that you're going to do a market city analysis also of all of the different liquor license. And if you do that, and then if you're looking at sales, maybe you all can bring back something for us to look at with regard to restaurants and bars, right? That's the only uses that you're looking at, Dan K.
yeah, that's specific to
That's what I
Councilmember
would-
Gessis's point. It's
So let me ask this: everybody is okay with everything else that we're working on in terms of this policy? Everything is okay. The only thing that we're going to have staff work on is the fees and charges for restaurants and bars. Okay, and I see head nods.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah, there's
so-
no other real fee that rises to the level of concern as liquor.
yeah, and staff is doing those analysis right now. So Melanie and Greg, while you're doing that, you can take a look at our market cities also. Okay, because everything else looks good from everybody. So we have consensus then, and those are the only things that we want staff to look at and to bring back to us. If somebody can just give me thumbs up. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay,
Madam Mayor. Thank you, Council.
okay, great. That is now done. We'll go to the next one, and this is the sign permit fees. This is Regina Dean, our Assistant Community Development Director, and there's no action required on this. Regina, you're going to be giving us some information, and welcome.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Wait for the presentation to appear. Okay. So this item was brought up at the 2020 all-day work session, and some questions arose regarding how we treat our leasing and real estate temporary signs. And so from that point forward, there was direction to take a look at what we do and provide a further update at a future work session. So that brings us to today. The overall, next slide, please. The overall, I would say, history of how we got to this point is kind of a combination of things. So our city code, particularly the sign code, was pretty outdated. In 2015, there was a Supreme Court case, Gilbert versus Reed, that talked about content-based sign code, and that cities really cannot have sign codes that talk about content, that content-based regulations essentially are prohibited.
Mhm.
So as we opened up the window, taking a look at our city code to make changes, we noticed, gosh, there were a lot of sections within our city code that dealt with content. Development signs, employment signs, now hiring signs, special event signs, multifamily signs, they all deal with content. So that was one thing that we had to take a look at and had recommended to change, which we did. Another thing that we looked at when we opened up the store was what are the fees? So with pretty much with any code change we do, we look at the market, not only with the city code provisions, but then also the fees that we charge that might be associated with those code provisions. And so we, took a look at our market cities. As part of your discussion from the previous topic, we charge based off of the market and cost recovery. So that's where a lot of our, as you look at the charts, where the fees derive from or how we got to that point. Next slide, please. So this may be small for you to view. This is in your background. However, when we looked at the market, we wanted to see how we compared with other cities, particularly with our temporary signs and our temporary sign fees. So we have a list of, I think there's 13 market cities that we compared ourselves against. And it really ran the gamut, anywhere from $5 for a temporary sign permit fee to on up to, I think, $200 or so for a sign permit fee for temporary. And because those numbers were kind of all over the place, and they were associated with a 1-day temporary sign permit fee or a 30-day temporary sign permit fee or a 90-day, we took that information and had it put an assumption that these were valid for 90 days. So we did kind of a multiplier to see if I were to go to Apple Valley and request a sign permit for 90 days for a temporary sign, what would that fee be? In Apple Valley case, it would be $30. But then in other cities, it may be more, $225 in Brooklyn Park, for example. Next slide, please. And this is just a continuation of those market cities that we evaluated. What we found is that Burnsville is pretty much right in the middle. 4 to 5 cities are higher, 5 are less than us, and then 2 just simply prohibit temporary signs. Eden Prairie is an example of that. Next slide, please. So taking a closer look at fees, again, you probably can't see the graphic on the left-hand side, but when we went through the process in 2019 to evaluate sign permit fees, we really eliminated a lot of the fees that were associated with the employment type signs, now hiring signs, sandwich board signs, and created essentially 2 different categories, a temporary sign permit fee and a permanent sign permit fee. And like I said, pretty much eliminated everything else. So a permanent sign is really anything over 180 days on a property. So the sign permit fee is $175 to replace a sign face or for a brand new wall sign. And then for a new freestanding sign, brand new, for 180 days or a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, as long as you don't change that sign, it's $255. Temporary sign fees, we changed those as well, and it ranges from $100 to $200. So they're intended to be less than the permanent sign fees. And I do want to note that we did actually eliminate some sign permit fees. So sandwich board signs, we used to charge a fee, $130 per year. We also used to charge for employment signs. So if you were hiring, for example, you would be charged $260 per month. Now, if you only wanted to have that now hiring sign up, you would be charged a temporary sign fee. You can have that up for 90 days and it would be $100. Some signs don't require fees anymore. Sandwich board signs would be an example of this. You can now put a sandwich board sign out, no charge. Signs also under a certain square footage, for example, 6 square feet or less, don't trigger any type of permit requirement. They're simply free. Just go out and do it. And then we also changed some regulations as it relates to special events. They used to be considered a sign, which is really peculiar to me. But if you get a special event permit through our business regulations, you can have signage associated with that. And it's no longer part of what I would classify as the temporary sign or permanent sign category. So it's a separate deal altogether. I do want to note too, different events like legacy events or community events are exempt from any type of sign permit fee. So that's something to note. With that, I can certainly stand for any questions. If you would like clarification on any item or more detail, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Any questions for Regina? Staff is recommending that no action is required here and recommends keeping the fees as is. Dan Keeley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of questions. In the background, there was a reference, Ms. Dean, about some interaction with some, I would assume business owners that were reached out to and interacted with. Is that referencing back the 2019 process that we went through to get to where we are today? So
That's correct.
There was some noted businesses impacted. Do we know, do we have, I guess, do you remember like who was impacted to the negative and who was impacted to the positive? Like maybe, some people had some fees that they might have paid in the past eliminated or greatly reduced, and others might have had, or were there any that had an increase?
So I would say the real estate community, the larger commercial type real estate, your industrial, your large commercial may have been impacted the greatest at face value. So prior, you could have a temporary sign up. It was considered a for lease real estate sign. For people really kept these up indefinitely at no charge. And so with the Gilbert versus Reed decision where we could no longer specify content, we had to come up with the solution that worked across the board. And I would say the real estate for lease people may have been impacted the greatest. Now, they do have the option of pulling one permit and considering it a permanent sign and paying that, I think it's $275, or I'm sorry, $255 for a freestanding sign, or they can integrate it into an existing sign. So for example, if they have a monument sign or they have a wall sign, or they want to use their window as an opportunity to say, this is for lease, this is for sale, they can do that. Some options are at no cost, the window sign example. Other options are, again, at that, it would be considered a permanent sign, or they have that 90-day option.
I do remember hearing from a couple, and I'm sure Mr. Gustafson did too, being in that industry, heard from some longstanding members of our commercial real estate industry that live and or work in Burnsville. And yes, they were a little taken aback by having to pay the $255 after paying nothing for so long. And so there was some concerns expressed there. I'm curious, just want to clarify our current waiver of the sign ordinance during COVID. Could you just clarify what that means? That's not a waiver of fees. Is it just a waiver of the rules, or it also takes out the fees?
I don't have the executive order in front of me. However, I believe it's just an exemption period I
So-
don't believe we're charging any fees for
Gotcha.
the
Okay.
temporary signs that are out.
Which should make sense. If we're going to relax all the rules, then how do you tie a fee to, putting a sign out? And currently, is that executive order, city manager Lee, going to extend through June 30th? Is that what it's currently planned at, or is it indefinite? I can't remember for some reason that
Melanie?
the details on that sign executive order.
Yeah, Madam Mayor and Council, the executive order would generally, I think, practically expire when the governor's executive order expires. We could extend it, but I think the justification would be hard to justify. And I'm going to pull up the executive order so I can get the exact language for you. So,
And
Well,
so
you continue
currently,
to-
then it would be probably tying out to, what is it, June 13th? Is that the current end of the emergency, governor's emergency executive order? It
June
was
11th,
extended-
I think.
Or June 11th, sorry.
Mhm.
Okay, so we have till June 11th on that. So we have to consider that as we go the next few weeks and see where everything is at. Well, thank you, Ms. Dean. This is, I want to, as long as our current temporary sign fees are currently essentially waived as a result of the executive order and declaration of emergency, what do you see happening when, let's say it stops on June 11th and June 12th forward, do all of these fees now kick back in? And what's our approach to if a person did or didn't put any sign request in prior to COVID, but that now wants to do it again? Because we have I think it's 2 90-day periods, right? So maybe I'm a business that used a 90-day period before COVID hit. And then now we're in a waiver period. And then we're going to start it back up again. Are we going to allow those businesses to come back and have 2 90-day periods for the rest of the year, or only give them the one that they had prior to? Have we by chance thought about just how we're going to manage that restarting of this sign fee program?
Yeah, I'm going to go to Jenny. She
Um,
has her hand up, and Jenny?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. So just to clarify, 2 things. The order is related to temporary business signs to allow local businesses affected by the emergency proclamation to post on-premise signs informing the public of the availability and process for obtaining their products, such as takeout or curbside pickup. So it's not an across-the-board waiver. It is just for those that were directly affected from COVID. Regarding the enforcement side of this, we are not proactively doing code enforcement. So this ends up being more so on your honor. The fee is, when people call and they ask, this is what the fee is. Unless we get a complaint because someone has a shoddy sign or it's fallen. If we get a complaint, then we'll go out and look at it and see if they have a permit. But because we're not doing proactive, we can't track it if permits aren't required, and we're going out and being proactive, I guess. So hopefully that answers both of those questions.
Okay, thank you. Well, I guess this is all leading up to, I'm trying to figure out what are we going to plan on doing, because one of the things that I believe, and this might go contrary to Councilmember Gustafson's comment about reducing fees right now might not be ideal for the city. I'm a strong believer that the city has to participate in the solution, and the solution is to help our businesses thrive so we can actually collect a fee maybe in 2021 and not just try and get one this year and have them, and they're impacted in a much bigger level than just this fee. But I would propose that we just consider waiving temporary sign fees through the end of 2020. I think we all have come to the realization that this the impact of COVID on our businesses is so dramatic that it's really hurting them through the end of the year, and it may hurt them into the next year, but we have time to evaluate that. But for now, I would like to see us waive temporary sign fees through the end of 2020. Thank you.
So council, how about if we have staff also bring back some numbers to us? If we do that, Jenny and Regina, how many temporary sign fees do we see in a year?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, this is off of my old memory, but I think in our budget, we plan about $20,000 to $25,000 a year in total sign permits. So the temporary signs would be a small portion of that.
What I
We
was saying.
can bring back the numbers, but it's a nominal amount, I would say.
Yeah,
Can't be more than half of that.
yeah. I would say let's take a look at the numbers as we continue on with our budget process as well, because I think we need to be prudent and thoughtful. Kara?
I support waiving the fees. I think, I think that our business owners are going to be opening, changing hours, doing lots of different quick things that they're going to have to do, not just through the summer, but also looking at the fall, because I think this fall and winter, from everything that we're hearing, we will, we'll have a pickup of coronavirus again. And we may have to have businesses that are really changing quickly on what they're doing. And that signage could be very important for our residents so that they can quickly see as they're driving by, what's going on, what's open, what are the hours, that type of thing. I am actually in favor of waiving it. It does appear that it's,
This is only
monetarily for us a small amount. So, yeah.
And this is only for the temporary signs. Okay, Councilmember Dan.
Absolutely,
Gus-
temporary signs, yes.
Only. Okay,
I agree with my colleagues on the temporary signs. It's things are going to change probably weekly for a while, and we're going to see a lot of businesses opening, and different things are going to be happening. And right now with the temporaries, as Jenny told us, that's kind of a nominal charge. When you look at the overall signage part, so I think that would help everybody, our businesses, our churches, our food shelves. A lot of different people are trying to get some things done right now so they don't get charged for signage.
okay.
On the temporary. And
Okay,
all my real estate signs will be temporary, by the way.
Okay. I'll go to Jenny and then Dan Keeley. Jenny.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I also want to assure you that we are keeping an eye on the peacetime emergency timing, because we know this is important to our community. It's important to you. And when these executive orders expire, we want to make sure that if we want them to continue, that we bring forward an interim ordinance that would extend these for our businesses when that expires. So we're keeping an eye on that, and that's kind of the direction that we're thinking.
Yeah, I like that, because we're being thoughtful, because it's about the whole community and we want to help our businesses, but also let's take a look at that revenue. And if you say it's not that much, then that's great. Dan Keeley, but it's good to just know what that loss would be. Dan.
Great, and thank you. And I didn't expect the temporary signs to be a huge financial hit. I think a lot of the things that we're doing is, it may not have a huge financial price tag savings to the business, but it's part of what I think we should do as a city to live up to that flexibility, right? And are innovative, are flexible, are supporting our business community, waiving our discussion on liquor license, same thing. It's all the things that I believe we as a city need to do at a time like this. And some of them cost the city a lot. The liquor could potentially be a big price tag to the city. The temporary sign may not, but all of them, I believe, are absolutely the right thing to do to help our businesses succeed, so we can look to the future and gain a license fee from them year over year after we help them get past this crisis. Thank you.
Okay, Kara.
Yeah, I see this less as a monetary issue and more as a speed and adaptability issue.
Okay. Jenny?
Last thing, if we could get a motion on the action of the council, that would be helpful for the record.
Okay. May I have a motion? Even when we do this, I still would like to see the numbers because we're going into budget. So may I have a motion to suspend the temporary license fees to the end to December 30th?
A motion to suspend our temporary sign
License.
license fees through the end of 2020, December 31st.
And I will
Okay, there's a
second.
motion second by Kara. Any other thoughts? Seeing none, the clerk, please take the roll call. I'll take the roll call.
Sorry, Madam Mayor. I was
No,
busy typing. Councilmember Gustafson,
Aye.
Mayor Couts,
Aye.
Councilmember Keeley,
Aye.
Councilmember Schultz,
Yes.
Councilmember Workman.
Aye.
Okay, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. So the thing is, when we go through, let's make sure that because one of the things in Melanie's updates is she shows us the lost revenue, and the lost revenue is not something that is going to be reimbursable. Am I correct in understanding that, Melanie?
Madam Mayor and Council, under the current CARES Act, for which there is money available for local governments, lost revenue is not an eligible cost.
Yeah.
There is a proposal, the HEROES Act before the House on the federal level that would include that, but that hasn't been passed yet. So
Yeah,
under
it
current
passed in
rules,
the House, but it's not in the Senate, and we don't know
Got
the
it.
president's gonna, yeah. But right now, it's not a recoverable cost. So we need to, that's part of our fiduciary responsibility. We're going to waive it, but all costs, all lost revenue, we should pay attention to. Jenny, I think your hand was up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. We'll be sure to get that information to you in the next day or two, what we had planned in the budget for that. So we'll get that information to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Members of the council, if there's nothing else with regard to this item, and I think we've done that. Is there other items to come before us this evening? Oh, we don't have any other items. So members of the council, no other items to come before us this evening, and I will adjourn our meeting by acclamation. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
good night. Well, team, another good meeting. Thank